SPIE, or what conference is that?
No, I can't. I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. Could you
Oh,
repeat?
sorry. I was asking what conference are you preparing for?
It's called the TMS conference. It's the materials, minerals,
Or what conference is
some
that?
other M. It's a lot of M's, but okay. Our group often participates in it, so just talking about my research is what I'm preparing for.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so yeah, let's as I said, give a couple of minutes to people. I'm not recording anything yet, and then we'll move on. As I said, I don't know. Do you have some slides to show, or yeah? Okay, yeah. So I give you some questions, but please feel free to create your own kind of narrative. I just want to give you a little bit of the background on why I'm doing this, and you know what we're seeing here. And David Everett here, he sees some of this physics in his. He teaches calculus-based physics. I teach algebra-based. So for me, and astronomy, gen-ed astronomy. And so for me, some of my students are like pre-med or biology-bound students. But David does sees engineers. Right, David, you want to say a few words about your students, your experience on the students you have in your class, about their engineering interests or other things like that?
Yeah, the most of the students are engineering students. I'm always excited when we get a couple of physics majors, but mostly engineering and computer science, but more and more people are taking interest in material science, and we have a nice engineering material science course that we teach at the community college. But yeah, mostly engineering, mostly mechanical, and then some electrical. But they don't. I think I'm excited to hear from you. I mean, I think a lot of students don't know what material science means, and they also have not even thought about graduate school. And it's a good thing to put in their heads. Like, have you thought about graduate school? Yeah. So I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, happy to plant some seeds.
Excellent.
One of the things that we point out recently, we have this STEM, we started before COVID, we have this STEM learning community or STEM center. We are trying to expose students to the possibility of attending REU or summer internships. We kind of guide them through either the NSF website or the DoD, DOE, NASA. And so really students, because some students focus on getting their credits done in order to transfer. They don't realize that there are these internships that give them a totally different level of expertise, right? And they boost their chances to access not just California schools, but even like outside the state of California, because you get an internship at MIT or Harvard or Texas or you name it, right? So this is also part of our kind of effort here towards our students. Okay, so this is actually one of my students also just joined Aubrey here. So again, if you don't mind, I'm going to give a couple of more minutes, and then might be a little bit small cohort today. I'm sorry about that. As I said, there are a lot of things going on, some exams, but you know, so let's see. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I'm not recording anything yet. So, Juliana, do you mind tell us, who you are, what your interests are, and so on? If she's still here.
Are you talking to me?
Oh, I was talking to Juliana, but since Aubrey, you unmute yourself. Why don't you go first?
I am a biochem major, and this is, or I guess fall 2021 is my transfer semester. So this is my last semester at College of Marin. I am applying to a bunch of internships as we speak in like all realms of science, just because like I just am I just like science in general. Like even physics to me is fascinating. So yeah, I feel like I'm at a point where I can do internships. I have time in my life and I'm interested to start going into the field, but I'm open to pretty much any possibility.
Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna start recording, and all right, so let me see. I should be able to put you, Danielle, on the, what do you say, spotlight for everyone. Here we go. No, wait, am I doing it right? I don't remember the spotlight. Okay, so thank you everybody for being here. This is our STEM speaker series, Meet the Scientists. And today we have the honor to host Ms. Danielle White. She'll tell us more about herself, but she's a material scientist, currently graduate student at University of Southern California. Previously was an engineering bachelor at a HBCU. So one thing that we also spotlight here is the importance of HBCUs, especially for our students of color, but for everybody, being myself from an HBCU in the past life. As an engineer at North Carolina A&T State, am I right? And so she will tell us more about her experience, her life journey, and please, since we are a few here, Danielle, do you prefer questions on the chat and then I'll give it to you at the end, or you prefer on the spot? What is your preference?
We can do on the spot since it's more of an intimate meeting. I don't mind that.
Okay, so if you guys have any questions, please write it on the chat and then I'll bring it to Danielle when time comes. Okay. All right, Danielle, thank you very much for being here at College of Marin today. Take it away.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. Let's see. Okay, cool. Well, without further ado, I am Danielle White, as already mentioned. Once again, thank you for having me as part of your STEM series. And we'll get started talking about the journey to the center of my dreams. There is quite a bit to cover, so I thought I'd spend the first 15 minutes talking about my personal background, who I am, who I've become, and then transitioning more into the STEM aspect of the talk, going over my research interests and my current research project. And as I just mentioned, if you have questions at any time, please feel free to unmute yourselves or put it in the chat and y'all can ask me live as opposed to the end. So yeah, I decided to make this more of a visual presentation. So here are just a few pictures of my pre-collegiate experience. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, but I was raised in Lynn, Massachusetts. And while I was there are a couple institutions that I think were really instrumental into making me into the woman I am today. One is Girls Incorporated. We were housed in this beautiful red brick building. Girls Incorporated is an after-school program dedicated to making girls feel strong, smart, and bold. It's really similar to your Boys and Girls Club or your YMCA, but as the name implies, it is only for girls. So while I was there between the ages of 6 and 13, I learned how to camp, how to fish, how to ride a bike, take care of my bike, the importance of giving back to your community, and just as equally important, the concept of sisterhood. Another important institution that helped me before college was actually Boston University. I spent 2 summers there during high school. The first summer was before my junior year, and the second summer was right before my senior year. It was that summer that I was paired with a mechanical engineering senior project group, pictured here. They had actually entered into a United States Air Force competition challenging them to build a satellite. And of course, it had different criteria it had to hit. While I was there for 10 weeks, not only did I learn about satellites and space and even more about engineering, but I got a chance at machining parts that made the satellite itself. And it was that experience that was super rewarding to me. But I graduated June 10th, 2015. Now I will say that Lynn, Massachusetts looks more like this photo here than it does this photo here. But I did choose to include this high school graduation photo to give you a hint as to some of my core values which I'm sure will pop up later in a couple of slides. So I just wanted to hit on a few questions to just cover some more ground. And the first was what was on my mind while I was in high school or even middle school. And so yes, the usual teenage angst. I was going through all of my woes that I thought were greater than the world, but also I was really set on majoring in mechanical engineering. And thirdly, I think the other important thing that I was focused on was my creative release. My mom did a really good job at making sure that I had something to balance my academics. So I learned how to play the violin, the clarinet, and the steel drums. The steel drums are my ultimate favorite. They are an instrument that originates from Trinidad and Tobago, and arguably the only instrument made in the 20th century. But back to my major, how did I actually choose it? It is quite a strange story, or uncanny, but I was part of this co-curricular program in 5th grade. And one day, some General Electric employees came in and decided to build and program Lego robots with us. So not only did I really enjoy building those Lego robots, but the fact that I was able to tell it what to do, and then it did it, that was so amazing to me. I stared in awe as the robots moved in zigzag patterns across the floor, picked up arbitrary objects, and returned to its original position. So at the end of the day, I went up to one of the General Electric employees and I asked, what would this be called if I were to do this in college? And he didn't think anything of it. He just said mechanical engineering. And I'm sure this wasn't his intention, but I took that as law. And so between the 6th grade and 12th grade, my mom helped me verify that mechanical engineering was what I really wanted to do. She made sure I was part of other STEM camps outside of Boston University. And as sort of implied, I did verify that I really love mechanical engineering. Now, it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine. I did face some difficulties before college. And I think the two main difficulties I faced had to do with mental health and sacrifice. Now, my mom raised me as a single parent. She did drop out of college when she had me because she wanted to make sure that I was raised near my father. So she had a job that was just able to feed us, put clothes on our back, and a roof over our head. With that being said, I'm sure this was already in her brain, but when I told her about engineering, I'm sure she said, okay, well, the only way that she's going to be able to go to college and we can afford it is if I earned a full ride scholarship to college. So she pushed me to earn as many A's as possible. So that meant, sacrificing my childhood, sacrificing the time that a lot of people have to make friends, and even just enjoying youth, enjoying learning about yourself. But as I said, I graduated, and in that same year of 2015, I started at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. It is already, as mentioned, a historically Black university, or HBCU. Two fun facts. One is that it is the institution in this nation, not just the HBCU, but just the college in general, that graduates the most Black engineers annually. And then second fun fact, our engineering hall is named after Ronald E. McNair. I learned about him only when I got to A&T, but Ronald E. McNair was one of the very few Black astronauts. Unfortunately, he passed away on the Challenger space shuttle incident, the one that blew up in the 1980s. But the fact that before I even got to A&T, I knew I was interested in space. I knew I really liked engineering. And then while earning my engineering degree, it turns out that I was learning it in this hall named after Ronald E. McNair. That was sort of like a culmination of a lot of things. It was a pretty amazing experience. But once again, there are a couple of organizations that helped mold me further into the woman I am today. One of them is this org called the National Society of Black Engineers, or as I'll refer to as NSBE for the rest of this talk. NSBE is an organization located worldwide that has a mission of increasing the number of culturally responsible Black engineers that excel academically, succeed professionally, and positively impact the community. So this top picture here is some of us at a conference, and this photo here is the year that I was actually vice president over our organization. The second org is a bit different from engineering. we were called Aggie Livewire, and we're actually the pep squad on campus. So at every football, basketball, baseball, swimming, you name it, we were there supporting our student athletes. And I I joined the organization my freshman year, but sophomore year, I was the community service chair. And this is one of the pictures from that year. There was something pretty cool about giving back to a community that I wasn't familiar with, but nonetheless was still molding me into the person I am today. I see that there might be a question in the chat. Do you want to take time for that? Or
Don't worry, Danielle. Go ahead.
okay. So once again, just going over some questions. What was on my mind at this time? I think the first and really important question, it wasn't necessarily something I thought of every day, it's just something that happened. But I learned who I truly was. Before college, my focus was trying to hurry up and figure out what I wanted to do. And because I was able to achieve that, I spent my college years figuring out who I wanted to become and why. Secondly, I was really focused on building a long-lasting community. This middle picture here, this is my tribe. We met on the first day of college in freshman year. We're all in the honors dorm, and we are still friends to this day. But not only was I focused on building community with people my age, but also my institution. In this photo down here, with the three of us sort of in the same shirt, I was still a student at the time, but I had just come back from an internship, and A&T wanted me to speak on my experience and try to recruit other students to pursue an internship at that same company. Lastly, once again, I was really focused on my steps after graduation. So speaking of, how did I get to choose my post-graduation move? And I think this story, once again, is pretty uncanny. That seems to be a common theme with my journey. But it was 7th grade English class, and we were watching a documentary. And just like any documentary, there was an invited guest. His face popped up on the screen, and below him was his name and his title. And something about the way that scene popped up on the screen, I said to myself, you know, I want to be that person that's invited onto documentaries. I want to know some really cool information so people invite me to talk and they can learn what I know. And so I thought to myself, well, if that's really what I want to do, how are we going to become that type of person? And that's how graduate school became a feasible option for me. And then many years later, actually in 2018, I had an internship at NASA, actually at their Jet Propulsion Laboratory site in Pasadena. One day I was leaving work, and there was this blue Tesla parked outside. Not only was it a Tesla, but the license plate for NASA CEO. And I said, wow, I want that. I'm not talking about like the Tesla. I was honestly just talking about the flex that comes with having a NASA CEO license plate that just so happened to be on a Tesla. But I took the bus home that day, and I thought more about my fascination with what I just saw. I said, well, hold on, you know, CEO isn't really that far of a stretch for me. While I was at A&T in NSBE and the PEP squad, I had several leadership opportunities. In NSBE, as I mentioned, I was vice president one year. There was another year that I was the finance chair, and I was in charge of fundraising and reaching out to companies for partnerships and sponsorships. And then in Livewire, as I mentioned, one year I was community service chair, but I also served as the female face of the organization. And another year I was in charge of the logistics of the rest of the e-board. So like I said, CEO wasn't really that far of a stretch for me. Excuse me. So I looked further into the history of NASA CEOs at this site. And not really a surprise, all of the directors, that's what they're actually called, all of the directors of JPL are middle-aged to older white men. There is something wrong with that, but there's nothing wrong with that. I took from seeing that the fact that I needed to earn a PhD. The current director of NASA has a PhD. So if and when it came time for me to apply for that position, I want them to actually consider me and not just swat away my application because I didn't have the appropriate degree. So that's how I solidified the fact that I was going to earn a PhD. So once again, it wasn't all rainbows and sunshine and easily figuring out my next steps. But this time around, the difficulties I faced while I was at A&T had to do with loss and the imposter syndrome. June 7th, 2016, my best friend, someone I had just met at A&T actually, he took his own life. And that really hit me hard. Not only was that my first real time grieving, but it sent me into a mild depression. So the next semester, I was really struggling to earn good grades, and I ended up losing my full ride scholarship. So after that, then I started questioning my abilities. So I was wondering, did something neurologically happen to my brain that made me unable to learn? Was I able to earn this engineering degree? And all of these questions. I took some time to myself, but if there is any sign that I was able to do it, it was the fact that I graduated on December 14th, 2019. And just a few days later, I decided to move to Los Angeles and start my next chapter. Is there a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions if you don't mind. I think it's, so the first one is from Alma. Alma, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question directly?
Okay, thank you. Daniela, I'm kind of curious of, you had like two things that is unfortunate in everything is color and being female. How did you overcome, in my day it used to be called the good old boys club. Now I'm not sure what this generation calls it, but I'm sure it's not that much different. I'm curious how you overcame those struggles.
Are you talking about specifically in the realm of engineering or just anywhere?
All of it.
Okay, for sure. Well, let's say, I think I became aware that being Black and being a woman or a young lady were two things against me in high school. I was able to hold the #1 GPA in my class the whole time, but nonetheless, there was someone like right on my tail who just so happened to be that stereotypical white man. And not only was he sort of jealous, but it was also his parents feeding him things that just made it sort of a negative environment for me. But even though I was aware of said things, I didn't let it affect me. And I want to say I can attribute that to my ignorance. I didn't know that it should affect me. I was aware, but I didn't think anything of it. And then so entering into the engineering world and even at school, the fact that I was surrounded by a whole bunch of other students, not just Black engineering students, but just Black students in general, were all pursuing something that they wanted to do. That gave me the emotional support to achieve what I wanted. So when I started looking into internships, they were sending Black employees to come and recruit us. And so it wasn't automatically that connection, and it wasn't like a cheat code. I still had to work hard to achieve what I wanted to do. But seeing other people that looked like me in positions that I eventually wanted, it was reassuring once again. So when I left A&T and I went to like my internships at NASA or wherever else, and it wasn't this beautiful Black microcosm anymore, I had that reassurance in my back pocket. I had that understanding of who I was in my back pocket that allowed me to push through any doubts in the work environment.
That's the power of an HBCU, if I would say. I think, if you don't mind, before I go to David's question, I want to expand from Alma. I'm pretty sure as a woman in an engineering program, you must be one of the few. And so I think going from Alma's question, my question for you, Danielle, is, okay, being Black within an HBCU where 95% of the people are also Black helps you. But what about being a woman surrounded by men doing engineering programs?
when when I think of that question, the first thing I think of is, I can't remember if it was my orientation day or my first day of class. Nonetheless, all of the engineering students, we gathered in this this room, this auditorium. I looked around. The first thing I looked for were the women. I said, "Wow, like half the people here are women. I don't know what people are talking about. This is a perfectly saturated college or whatever." And then they started calling each major one by one. They called them in alphabetical order. So there was architectural, civil, biomedical, and by the time they got to industrial, there were about only 5 women left. I think they had all left to, like, a lot of them left for chemical engineering and biomedical engineering. So when it came to mechanical engineering, I said, here's where the stereotype lies. This is going to be the difficult part. But if I think on my experience throughout those 4 years, there are instances where being a woman felt difficult, and that came when I was more than likely just trying to explain my experience outside of school to my male colleagues, and they just didn't understand, whether it was someone I was taking a class with or one of my professors. They didn't understand the fact that being a woman was hard, and that I was subsequently seeking help from them. They just gave the answer of, it is what it is type thing, and keep moving. So that pushed me into finding my own niche of Black women, or just women in general, to help me along. I don't think I've really overcome or solved that aspect yet, but that's how it helped me.
I had experience in a similar situation in engineering in a different universities, and they had exactly the same story and resourceful that you did. David, you want to ask your question?
Sure. I was thinking about your experience with Livewire, and it's really clear that that was really valuable to you. And I was wondering what your opinion is of, would you recommend to students that, do you think extracurriculars are super important, or was that just you?
I think extracurriculars are very important, even outside of me. I use them mainly as a way of a release. Before college, I had my instruments, couldn't bring them with me, so I needed to find something else. So screaming at people was a great way to release any stress I had. But whatever your reason is for pursuing something else outside of your major, I would say do it. Not everyone has the unfortunate time of experiencing the imposter syndrome. But if it does happen, it's always great to have something else that you're good at to help verify the fact that you are capable.
Great. Thank you so much. There's no further questions so far, so it's all yours, Danielle.
Okay, cool. Thank you for all the questions so far. I believe that, as the slide shows, we have gotten to the grad school part. This was quite a big transition for me. As the slide shows, I was transitioning from an HBCU to a predominantly white institution. I was leaving the East Coast full of my friends and family to the West Coast, where I knew maybe 2 people. I'm a first generation student, definitely for the bachelor's degree. And so even more so as a graduate student. So navigating this territory is very fresh. If I want to reach out to someone for guidance, I just have to trust that they have my best interest. Whereas if other people have family or friends that have traversed that path before, they at least know that they could trust them. And then sort of as I mentioned briefly, I decided to move out on December 18th, and I started my first day of graduate school January 6th. I had very little downtime, very little time to soak in the fact that I did something. Excuse me. I just started my next chapter. I am going to try to describe some of the research I do. I will mention a few definitions that help with the understanding, and if there are any questions about that, please feel free to continue to ask questions. but I am a material science student. Material science in general, very broad, is the study, the understanding of materials. And a material is all around you. It's the floor, the ceiling, the computer, the shock absorbent material in your sneakers. Everything has a science to how and why it works. And getting a PhD in material science allows you to pick this one small subset of material science that you really want to master. So the first definition I will mention is nanotechnology. It is generally the design of like really tiny objects, but in the terms of my research, it is controlling large objects on a really tiny scale. Composites. Composites are a type of material where you take more than one separate material, you combine them somehow in a process, and then that combined material has better properties than any of the individual ones. So combining your nanotechnology and composites, one subset that you'll get is nano multilayers. It is a mouthful, but this is the crux of my research. And just briefly or in short, they are a type of composite that has alternating layers, with each layer only being a few nanometers thick. Now, just for perspective, a millimeter is super, super small, but a nanometer is like 1/10,000th of a millimeter. There's a picture on the next slide to help y'all with the visuals. But one more definition, one more subset under your nanomultilayers are optical nanomultilayers. And all this means are either those that act as a mirror where it reflects light, or those that act as your window or a lens where it allows all light to pass through and it's transparent. So here's an example of one. Of course, like I said, they're really tiny. So this is a blown up schematic of a nanomultilayer, but we're going to cover some more definitions to help understand what this is. So the first is your substrate, and that's what we make our nanomultilayer on top of. If you think at the end of the day, when you go home and you make a plate of food for dinner, you're putting the food on top of a plate, but the plate isn't part of what you're eating. The same thing here. We're making our nanomultilayers on top of our substrate, but the substrate is not part of that material system. The second thing I wanted to point out are our materials. In our research, we work a lot with ceramics. Now, a great example of a ceramic would be your brick red flower pot. If you've ever seen or felt one, you know that it's really hard, but if you were to drop it, it would definitely shatter. That's just something important to remember. Thirdly, we have layer thickness. Now, the thickness of each layer, even though it's only nanometers thick, it is still important, and it controls the overall properties of our nanomultilayer. It controls how transparent it is. It controls how hard or like strong material is, amongst other things. And then lastly, we have the term interface. Now, the interface are the 2D space between two layers. So let's say we have two pieces of paper, we stick them together. Your interface would be that 2D space where the two inner parts of your paper are touching. Same thing here. It's that 2D space between two adjacent layers. Oh no. Okay, so I gave you a lot of definitions. Why do we even care? Like, I know that nanomultilayers are such a subset under a subset under a subset. What's so great about them? As I sort of hinted at, they have really cool properties that are coveted in the engineering world. They are light in weight, they're really strong, they're scratch resistant, and corrosion resistant. And this is just in general. And because these properties are often coveted by engineering companies, they have wide applications. However, the companies that are funding this project, they're interested in using them for sensors and then optical windows. And when I say optical windows, I just mean those that are either your everyday window where you can see clearly through them, or they're your mirrored window like you would see in an interrogation room. So there's just one how question about nanomultilayers that I wanted to answer. And as I said, we do a lot with ceramics in this project. Ceramics, you can't see through at all. You can't see through your flower pot. But how do we make that into something that's transparent? And the answer lies in your high school physics class. Here is a schematic of the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, light, the visible light that we can see on an everyday basis, isn't the only thing that's considered light. We have the radio, the microwaves, the infrared waves, ultraviolet. All of these are considered different forms of light, and all of them travel at different wavelengths. I want you to remember that as we go to this next picture. Don't get too caught up in the letters or numbers or words. It can get confusing. I just want you to focus on the picture itself. So here on the right in this B photo, we have your nanomultilayer. Now, if we want it to be transparent, this means that the light that we're shining through it should hit as little obstacles as possible. So whether that's like a couple atoms here, the path should be completely clear. If it starts interacting and bumping into the atoms that are in the way, then it'll start reflecting that light off, and that's how the lens can become muddy, or it even becomes a mirror and you can't see through it at all. So the answer as to how we're able to make sure the light travels all the way through and it's a transparent system is, once again, in that layer thickness. The thinner that we make our layers, the less likely that the light will start interacting and bouncing off of the atoms that are there. And this is why our layers are only a few nanometers thick. So that's a lot of background. Sorry for that. But we'll move into how we make them. And before I really dive into that picture, I wanted to talk about the two main types of manufacturing or machining. There's one where it's like more of the subtractive kind. If you think of a sculptor or that SpongeBob episode where you take a really large chunk of ice and you break it down into your final form, that would be the more common version of machining or manufacturing. And then secondly, there's additive manufacturing, where it's more comparable to Legos, where you're building something brick by brick into the structure that you want. So
Danielle?
our project,
Sorry, there's a question from David. Are these type of coatings the one that you have on the glasses, for example?
I'm not sure if people use these coatings on glasses, but that would be a really great use for them. This is relatively expensive, so I'm sure they're comparable, but maybe a bit cheaper. But that, for whoever asked that question, that's a great comparison.
Cool, thanks.
So our project is more of an additive manufacturing kind. We're taking our Legos and we're building them up brick by brick. However, instead of bricks or really large pieces, we're building our system atom by atom. I'm not going to spend too much time describing the process, but essentially this is a chamber that we use to make our system. And based on the electricity that we allow to go through, the gas that we fill the chamber with, the distance between your substrate and your ceramics, it all yields different types of nanomultilayer systems. Gosh, sorry. Okay. So like I just said, if you were to change any one of those parameters, it would yield in something completely different. That's the takeaway I want y'all to have from the synthesis part of my research. So now that we know how to make nanomultilayers, of course, the next question is, well, how can we make them better? Well, what does better even mean in this instance? Because I'm working with transparent nanomultilayers, excuse me, transparent would mean that we want them to be as clear as possible and as least reflecting as possible. We want them to act more like a lens in a regular window and less like a mirror. The way we do that is using a code. Someone super smart, and long before my time, made this code in MATLAB that allows us to put in the materials that we want, and it'll tell us how thick to make each layer, and then how transparent it'll be at the end. It takes a lot of the guessing game out of it and saves a lot of time because we don't even have to make them. We can just model it in the software. So with that being said, a lot of the focus of this project so far was on making sure that the system was transparent. But can we keep that same optical transparency and use it in other functions? And the answer is yes. We do have multifunctional codings where they're like a cross section of different functions. So one function that I mentioned so far is optics. And because my undergrad degree is in mechanical engineering, I chose the second function to be mechanics. And by mechanics, we're focusing more on the strength, the hardness of your system. So here are 3 examples of the way that we can learn more about the mechanics of our material. I'll only go over the first one called nano indentation. Now let's say we have our thin film. This is my hand, it's a thin film. Now in nano indentation, it takes a probe that's even smaller than the tip of your pen and starts probing into the surface of your thin film. Now when it probes into it, it'll leave an indent that'll look much like that second picture. And based on the size of that indent, how hard it was for the probe to actually push down onto the thin film, and a few other parameters, you can figure out the strength and hardness of your system. But with that being said, I will open the floor for more questions. But there is something I wanted to ask anyone who's watching, more as a rhetorical question. Do you want to be a trailblazer, or do you want to improve upon the path of those that have come before you? Do you want to be the first person who's ever done it, or do you want to be that person who does it better than someone who does it before you? I think if you narrow down your choices, whatever choice you're making in life, if you narrow those down to those 2 options, then you're moving in the right path. Thank you.
That's a great question. So anybody wants to take on the question from Danielle? I see some of my students here in the room. Go, Juan. Trailblazer. Go ahead.
I would personally say, in a way, both. If possible. I mean, I understand too, that would, it's a lot of hard work, but at the same time, it's I feel like I would want to be both, just to, further innovate, but also with the knowledge that has come before me, because we can't do this nothing alone, I believe.
The cautious approach, huh, Danielle?
I like it, both though.
Anybody else?
I'm kind of curious, for someone that's in high school, it's if you're not even sure how to answer that question, especially when you're a teenager. My daughter's 15 and she's unclear what she wants to do. She's great in math and science. I mean, I've always said I'm horrible at math, but I honestly don't think I'm that bad, but I've always kind of had that thought in my head as a little kid, because I heard all the other females say the same thing, because it was pretty much, predominantly males, where the mechanics and all that. And then in my day we were in homemaking, so I'm not sure how I could what would be your advice for young ladies that are not sure if, for myself, have put it in their head that I don't think I can do that, but just insecure. I guess that insecurity is from what society has ingrained in us. And as a mother, I just want to be able to not put that upon her or other strong females, whether they're considered alpha or beta or whatever, not to put that in my language. Somehow I can, because we're not, when we come across people, a lot of times something that we may have said sticks with someone for a long time. And so what would be your advice? Because I definitely don't want to put that upon my daughter or any other young lady or
Well, firstly, thank you so much for asking that question, and thank you for being willing to share that and sort of know where you stand. My advice would be to try to surround her in those like extracurricular programs. I think that just in general, maybe they're not in your hometown, but relatively close, there should be some programs where they're at the local college or a place like Girls Inc. that are catering to exposing not only minorities, but also young women to STEM. And so if she has that opportunity or that experience, where not only it's her first time really figuring out what she likes, but there are a whole bunch of other people that look like her and they're also figuring out what she likes, that experience will stick with her a long time, more so than any negative words that someone can say.
And Alma, I don't know if I shared with you, I just posted on the chat the Department of Defense apprenticeship program, which is available to high school students from 9th to 12th grade. Those are also great program, especially now we are in COVID-19 pandemic. These programs don't require you to be in a specific location. So they really have access to more than 70 internship across the country from where you're sitting right now.
I'm sorry, you said Department of Defense?
Yeah, I just posted on the chat. You can.
Oh, thank you.
And in, I don't know where you are, but here in Marin, and David, you might know more, there is something called Girls Who Code, which is I don't know if it's international, just national. Essentially, is a group of, people that teach, in particular, young women how to program, for example. And I can give you resources for that. I've seen some flyer around Marine here in Kensfield, but I'm pretty sure they are accessible anywhere else. I don't know, David, do you know any other opportunities for high school students?
And not off the top of my head. Yeah, but I have definitely, like the idea of opportunities. Of course, that may not be as easy as it sounds, but I know with my kids, I was lucky enough to give them lots of different opportunities, and most of them didn't stick, which was totally fine. And they eventually like hit on something, and they said, "Okay, this is the one I like this." And so I think variety is super.
And David, you also have a question for Danielle. Oh, sorry, Alma, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm curious if there's any way, Danielle, that you would be able to, like, I believe that Tam High School has some kind of bridge program with College of Marin. Because it would be just amazing to have someone like yourself to be able to, what you just shared with us, to share with that high school. I don't know how that would happen. Because my daughter is unclear. She thought about going to college in Marin. I'm not sure if it's because I'm going, or as if she doesn't feel like she has the opportunity to. I'm going to take her to Berkeley, and I'm going to start taking her to different campuses. But it's nothing like having someone like yourself not only share your story, but just your presence. And, it speaks volumes, like how they say a picture speaks 1,000 words, where this video speaks even way more. Be better in person, but this is what we have is Zoom. So I'm wondering if there's any kind of way, because she goes to Tam High School. Well, now I have her in Independent. That's a long story, but I'm wondering if like there could be some kind of way to have someone such as yourself be able to be there for young ladies that are getting all that negative feedback. Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, Danielle, before I even say that, Alma, just remember this video is also recorded, right? So there are things that we can share with all the College of Marin stakeholders, right? All the summer programs, breach programs, summer bridge, and all these other things. And I'm pretty sure that we can expand from there. I don't know, Danielle. It seems like an invitation for future times.
I would love to. I really enjoy giving back and sharing my experiences with other people. I think of it just personally as a way that God's using me. So if you wanted to like organize or we can talk offline about that, I would truly be honored.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we can truly talk offline about future opportunities. That's great. Thank you very much, Danielle. There is a question from David about, David, you want to ask the engineering BS bachelor's question?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, what you have a bachelor's degree in engineering and went to study material science in grad school, but is that what you need? Could you go to material science via another route?
No, engineering isn't necessary. Like I said, there's so much to cover. So I actually started in mechanical engineering. And I should have talked about it, but I think I blocked it out of my head because it was just such a negative experience. I did not feel welcomed at all in the department. The imposter syndrome kicked back in, and I had this one chance to basically like redeem myself, and it was a summer class this past summer, and I was doing all right, and I ended up failing my final, and that was just the worst feeling ever. So my advisor, I'm glad I chose her. She's from Colombia, so not only she's a minority, she's a woman, and she understands. She helped me transition to a totally new department, material science, and yes, it is a bit different. It's going to be a bit more difficult because I don't have that undergraduate degree in something materials related, but it goes to prove that you don't need it. And we have someone in our lab who got his degree in physics. I know other people, they're transferring from chemical engineering and aerospace engineering. So somewhere in between that mixture, I think would be a great fit.
Awesome. Juan, do you have a question? Sorry, I saw your hands late.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, what advice would you give, like, to a student that's, first generation student, that doesn't have too much backing, from family, like, just kind of going through school, on their own dime and on their own, motivation and everything else. Like, what sort of advice would you give to someone like that, especially like, someone that's like thinking about some like, science field major, because that can especially get a little bit difficult, especially if you don't have like that, those people around you that can, probably make it easier for you, like you said, like maybe family, like kind of like, be familiar with a certain field. Like, what kind of advice would you give?
I feel like I have a lot of advice ideas, so hopefully it makes sense when I bring it together. The first I would say is try to go where you're supported. And I'm not just talking about like choose a school that has a great support system. Just wherever you decide to surround yourself, make sure you feel supported there. When I was at my school A&T, I felt supported due to the fact that I saw people who looked like me, and there were a whole bunch of other first generation students, a whole bunch of other people coming from single parent homes. So maybe we were all doing it for the first time together, but it was that support that helped me through. Secondly, I would say it's great to know like who you are because of your circumstance, but it's another thing, and it may become a bit detrimental to let that define you. So in other words, knowing that we're first generation students, we know what we're dealing with. So when you put yourself out there, maybe you have to go above and beyond, whether it's like networking behind the scenes. If we're at an event like this and you see someone new that on the video call that you may want to just like chat with offline, then you could message them and learn from their experience. But it requires us to put ourselves out there in a way that's not letting our weakness define who we are, but it's turning that around and using that as fuel. And so I don't think I have many other like concrete forms of advice. It's more just like that mentality that you're using.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So before we move on, Danielle, I just saw the director of the STEM Center, Dr. Paul Dobenmeyer here join us, also escaping probably from the other meeting to hear you. Paul, do you want to say a few words?
Yes, I just want to thank you, Danielle, for taking the time to join the College of Marin speaker series. I do apologize. We're in a 4-hour equity summit right now. It's the first time we've ever done this on campus. So we're pushing the needle, getting everybody rowing in the same direction. And we definitely mentioned that your talk was going on. So as Dr. Nino mentioned, and from what I heard from the comments of the participants listening, it does look like we really could you be open to having you back from the perspective of just, your life experience just by you being you is an automatic mentor. And for that, I'm really grateful. Many times people don't have to say anything. Just having the face in the room or the person at the table is indicative that the pathway is open for me too also to do that. So I wanted to thank you for being where you are and for pressing on to as an inspiration. And as I think Alma mentioned, we're always looking for people we can connect as mentors, even to bounce questions off. It's kind of funny in this called Dr. Everett's daughter's in grad school, and she's affiliated with an REU program. And she was just open to like answer questions about that. And that set off a light bulb. Like in this Zoom era, it's so easy to connect people across the United States or across the earth to answer a question, whereas before it had been impossible to find one another. So I wanted to thank you again for your openness and willingness to participate in this way.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you.
So Danielle, I want to, oh, sorry, Alma, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just one other thing. So Emoja has a woman-to-woman group that is started, and I'm wondering if there's any way Danielle could be like, even just like a glimpse guest appearance or something. I mean, I think, you just motivated me. Just like I'm sorry, forgive me, I forget names, but the person that just spoke, just said it so eloquently. Just your presence would be just amazing. It's just throwing it out there, Meaty.
Yeah, I can talk to Bonnie and Renata about that, which are the leader of this event called Women to Woman. It's a safe space for gender identified women in College of Marin to kind of talk with each other, find a safe space. They have different topics every month or every other week or something. That's another avenue where we can surely bring you in. Thank you, Alma, for bringing that up. Danielle, I want to say something because I have a similar experience in some form, which is the importance of having a mentor. You mentioned your advisor, the Colombian person, and in going to Juan's question as well, which is how important has been in your life at any point in your career to have that 1, 2, 3 faculty members or mentors, let's say, that kind of help you out in that navigating those difficult moments where I'm in mechanical engineering. I really love mechanical engineering. I wanted to do mechanical engineering, and suddenly I'm failing something. Can you talk a little bit about that importance of those people and how to find them? Maybe you talk about coming out of your weaknesses, right, and putting them, turning them around as a strengths, right? Can you say a few words about that?
Sure. I 100% believe in the power of mentorship. When I was at A&T, I will say at this time, I knew that I wanted to work at NASA. I didn't know in what capacity. I didn't know I wanted to go to graduate school yet, but I had this favorite professor, and I told him that. And so he did his background digging, and he actually has connections with the site that I ended up working at. So it was me being able to put myself out there because I knew that I needed to take those extra steps, that someone was able to work behind the scenes and sort of give, like, connect me with that person. When it comes to choosing my graduate school, I think that that really shows the importance of mentorship. My decision shows the importance, rather. I was choosing between University of Southern California and University of Arkansas. I don't have any family in Arkansas, but since I was a college sophomore, they pursued me like aggressively. I really loved visiting. I loved the faculty there. But when it came time to actually figure out like the research group that I was going to be in, one, it was in a field that I wasn't interested in. Not only was I not interested, it's like my antithesis fields. I can't stand it with a passion. And then secondly, my research mentor was going to be a younger man, a younger white man. The only reason I'm painting that picture is not because I have an issue with being mentored by said person, but being younger, not having graduated anyone yet, so not knowing that path that it takes, like for sure, to graduate someone, let alone a first generation like graduate student who's sort of trying to still maneuver her way in STEM. I wasn't really comfortable, after all, choosing University of Arkansas. And then so here, although at the time I didn't know my advisor's like full story, when I've been down and I needed that reassurance, she shared with me, like she wasn't at an HBCU, but she was at a school that may be deemed like not as prestigious as the University of Southern California. So she knows about that transition. She knows about trying to voice her thoughts and opinions in a room full of men where they just don't listen. But yet she's the chair of her department. So how does that work? So just to wrap that up, I guess mentorship, it comes in various forms. Some people, they prefer to support you financially, and that is a great way to help. But I'm a big, firm believer of that in-person connection, whether it's helping you network in your career, your academics, spiritually, but just finding that person who can use their weaknesses, their experiences, their mistakes, and help you avoid those of your own.
That's great. Thank you very much, Danielle. Any other questions for Danielle? Any comments?
Your last comment just sparked another question. I mean, like the financial like sense, you know, it's like that gets kind of hard, you know. Even like me, like I've only been at College Maroons for 3 semesters now, and sometimes like the financial part can get somewhat stressful. And like, for example, like the internships, like this is something that like has come across, you know, my mind. Like there's internships and stuff, but like, you know, there's it's like by time. So how do you manage like all of that, you know, like having, for example, per se like a job and then like doing all these extracurricular activities, you know?
I will just say, put it out there, while I was at A&T, I only had a job the last year. So I'm not too familiar with actually balancing having a job and going to school at the same time. I will say that I have a lot of friends who were in that situation. And so I know that like there are times where they were super tired in class, and I was able to sort of help them out maybe afterwards. So if you have that network, that group of friends that maybe like one person goes to class one day or like vice versa, and you can balance and help each other, I think that type of support is great. I have other friends who are just really vocal. Like they would go up to the administration's office basically every week on a schedule and tell them, hey, I need money or else I have to drop out. And I think the fact that they were so adamant, so passionate, but yet so dedicated to sort of finding that funding opportunity, it made that connection between them and that administration person. So when a company comes and just donates a random amount of money, then you're the first person on their mind that they could potentially consider giving you some sort of scholarship to help you out. So once again, it goes into advocating for yourself. I think that's the
Yeah,
main
and I want to mention one more thing, Juan, that College of Marine does have, for example, students that qualify through FAFSA, this Federal Students Worker Opportunity, where you can work on campus so work with units on campus. So things that might even enhance your skills and knowledges. For example, I have one Federal Student Worker with me right now, who is a biochemistry student and work on astronomy project with me, right? And also the internships are not free; they pay you. I don't know if that you know, especially in science, technology, engineering, and math, in STEM fields, oftentimes, if not always, there are money involved, and there are actually all these internships are paid internships. Like the high school internship I was talking about, there are $3,000 for 8 weeks for high school students, right? So, and the NASA internships are also like $4,000 or $5,000 plus travel, plus lodging, and so on. So, you know, those are some of the things that are going on in the internship realm in STEM, right? If you're talking about humanities, stories are a little bit different, right? That's great. So I don't want to take more of Danielle's time. It's already 8 minutes after the hour. Danielle, thank you very much for being with us today. I don't know if you have some, thank you very much. So you put your email there. So if anybody wants to contact Danielle, I'll be able to share the email with her. Danielle, to you, the final minute, the final comments.
Well, thank you again. I'm really happy to have the space to share. I really enjoyed this question portion, probably more than talking about myself. Just learning that I guess other people are learning along with me, and we're all just trying to make it together, essentially. That really warms me. So I'm available. You have my email. If you just want to chat, vent, probe some more, feel free. But thank you so much.
Thank you very much. David, you have a comment?
No, just thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm glad we recorded this because there's lots of people that will be glad to see this.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you everybody for coming today. In a couple of weeks, we're gonna have a panel in honor. This was in honor of Black History Month. Next event is gonna be in honor of Women History Month, which is March. And so while we have Danielle here, we're gonna have a panel of 3 astronomers with very different backgrounds talking, and then a few more to come at the STEM Center. So again, thanks a lot for everybody to come in. Have a great weekend all. Thank you, Danielle, one more time. Good luck with I'm sure your comprehensive exam will come soon. So, or whatever they call it down in Southern California. Good luck with all of that. And hope to see you again with us soon. Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.